This is a simple, herb-forward salmon dinner. Crispy salmon, herb-roasted fingerling potatoes, and a fresh fennel and herb salad. It's inspired by the balance of a niçoise salad, but with quite a few changes and kept very straightforward. Nothing complicated, just good ingredients cooked well. The herbs we'll be using in this dish are dill, Italian parsley, and green onion. I like to start by prepping all of the herbs first. It keeps everything organized and makes the cooking feel slower and more intentional. These herbs are doing most of the work in this dish. Some go into the potatoes, some into the salad, and some finish the salmon. I also like to clean as I go and wipe the board down often. It keeps flavors clean and the process feeling calm. One small thing that makes a big difference is how you store herbs. I like to wrap them loosely in a damp paper towel and keep them in the fridge. It keeps them fresh much longer and they're always ready to use. For parsley, I like to pick the leaves from the stems. The leaves are where most of the flavor is and they stay tender when you chop them. Also, the stems don't go to waste, they go to our bunnies. There's nothing complicated here, just using the best part of the herb and keeping the flavors nice and clean. I also don't like to chop my herbs too fine. I want every bite to taste slightly different. Some bites are more parsley, some more dill, some more green onion. It keeps the dish fresh and layered instead of flat. That's really the idea here. Let the herbs show up. For the shallots, I buy them whole and chop them fresh. They're mild, a little sweet, and they add a lot without overpowering anything. I chop these pretty fine and I use a smaller knife just for shallots. The shorter blade gives me more control and makes it easier to keep everything even. Clean cuts, good control, and the flavor stays balanced. One small tip here. I don't like large cuts of onion or shallots in dishes like this. Big pieces tend to overpower a bite and throw off the balance. When the shallots are chopped small, they blend in and support the herbs instead of taking over. As you know, I'm a big fan of fresh ingredients. Jarred garlic just does not have the same flavor and it's usually pretty low quality. Honestly, it doesn't even taste like garlic to me. So I buy whole heads of garlic and I chop them fresh. When it's cut fine, it blends into the dish instead of standing out and it actually tastes like garlic. It's a small step, but it makes a huge difference in everything that you cook. For the potatoes, I like using an assortment of small and fingerling potatoes. They all have slightly different textures and starch levels. That variation gives you different bites on the plate. Some are creamier, some hold their shape more, and it keeps things interesting. It's an easy way to add texture without complicating anything. These potatoes will get tossed in a nice high quality extra virgin olive oil, some salt and pepper, and they're baked until they're just cooked. You don't want to cook them too long. Once the potatoes are cooked, I heat a pan over medium heat and add a little butter. You don't want to rush this part because you really don't want to brown the butter. You just want to gently melt it and coat the pan. Once the butter is melted, the shallots and garlic go in. I let them soften and turn translucent so they stay sweet and mellow. You want to watch this part of the process since this stuff can go from really nicely cooked to overcooked really quickly. When the shallots and garlic just start to take on a little color, that's the cue. The potatoes go in right away. I'll let this cook for a few minutes, just long enough for the potatoes to heat all the way through and pick up some of that flavor from the pan. Then the herb mixture goes in. I add it off the heat so the herbs stay fresh and aromatic. This is where the potatoes really come alive. Once the potatoes are done, I like to plate them family style. They're the kind of side that works with just about anything. Simple, comforting, and easy to share. This is a kind of food that belongs in the middle of the table. For this video, I wanted to show it both ways, a composed plate and a family style version. The composed plate shows how everything works together, and the family style version shows how I actually like to serve it. Same food, just two different ways to enjoy it. Now it's time to make the salad. I'm using fresh fennel and I'm going to shave it with the mandolin. Quick safety note. Be very careful here. The blade is extremely sharp, so go slow and use a handguard if you have one. I'm doing the same thing with a few radishes. I love this combination because it's all about contrast. The fennel is earthy and crisp, and the radish brings that clean, peppery bite. It's fresh, bright, and it balances the richness of the salmon perfectly. Now that these are both shaved and cut really nice and thin, I'll go ahead and add this with some spring mix and some of those fresh chopped herbs that we did earlier as well. I'll then give this a little toss to make sure everything is all nice and evenly combined. I'll season it with some salt and also some fresh cracked black pepper. And then we'll finish it with some extra virgin olive oil and a nice squeeze of some lemon juice as well. And that's it. This is fresh, herb forward, and ready to eat. This kind of salad is really easy to make and it works especially well with any kind of rich dishes you might be making, whether that's a steak, a stew, or anything that would benefit from something light and clean alongside it. It's really all about balance, and this salad is just a perfect way to really lighten any meal up. This is also a really easy and quick salad that you can throw together in just a few minutes using a lot of different ingredients you might have in your refrigerator or any kind of seasonal veggies that are looking good at the time when you go to the store. Now let's talk about the salmon. I usually buy my fish at Costco, but for this one I went to a local shop. Before I do anything, I always run my fingers lightly over the fillet to check for any pin bones. The skin is still on here, so we'll remove that. It helps the salmon cook more evenly and lets the herbs really coat the fish. And it gives me a really nice crunchy crust on the outside of the salmon that I love. I love cooking salmon because it has enough natural fat to do a lot of the work for you. You get a really crisp exterior and a soft, tender center. That contrast is what makes it so good. For this second piece, I'll walk you through how I remove the skin. I like to start at the corner of the fish. If this were a whole fillet, I'd start down at the tail. Get the knife in just under the meat, then press the blade down flat against the cutting board. As you slide the knife across, you're pushing down and forward at the same time. And once you've done it a few times, you won't leave any meat on the skin, just like these. And then I'll just trim up this piece and get it ready to cook. And for these longer pieces that are thin on one end, I'll just tuck that thinner piece under the fillet so that it's nice and consistent all the way through. I want it to be one consistently thick piece of meat so it all cooks at roughly the same time. And then we'll do the same thing with the other piece as well. So we'll just tuck the thin piece under the fatter part of the salmon. I like to season these pretty heavily on both sides. So we'll start with the bottom part of the meat and we'll just season both pieces here evenly. Then we'll flip it and season the top piece as well. And whenever you're searing meats like salmon, you always want to sear the presentation side first. So we're going to cook this with the top facing down initially in the pan. And of course we'll season with some fresh cracked black pepper as well. We'll go ahead and get a pan smoking hot. So I like to use my cast iron pan here, of course, because it just delivers great heat evenly throughout the pan. You should hear that sizzle the moment the salmon hits the pan. That sound tells you the pan is hot enough. Once both pieces are in, I'll give them both a gentle little nudge to make sure that they're not sticking in the pan. And after that, I don't touch them. This part is really important. Let the salmon get some color and cook in the pan. That's how you build flavor. If you start moving it around in the pan, it never has a chance to actually get color. So this has a pretty light sear, but I want to get a pretty hard sear. So I take it down even farther and get it searing even harder. I really like that crispy texture on the outside of my salmon. Once the presentation side is seared, I flip the salmon and spread a thin layer of Dijon mustard over each fillet. The mustard cuts through the richness of the salmon and helps the herbs stick. This doesn't make the salmon taste mustardy. It just adds balance and gives the dish that clean, restaurant-style finish. This one simple step really elevates this whole dish. From here, the salmon goes into the oven to finish cooking. It only takes about 5 minutes. This gentle finish keeps the salmon tender while the herbs stay fresh. This is exactly what we're looking for right here. A deep crust on the outside and soft, tender meat on the inside. That contrast in texture is what makes this dish so good. So now we'll put everything together as a composed dish. If you're having a dinner party, this is a great way to serve it. If it's just another family dinner, you can keep it easy and serve everything family style. Either way, this dish doesn't disappoint. If you enjoy simple, intentional cooking like this, make sure you're subscribed. I share full recipes, techniques, and real meals you can actually cook. Thanks for being here.